and welcome to our panel about Myst III Exile. Exile, as you probably all know, being Myst fans, was released by Presto Studios in 2001. It was the first Myst title that was not made by Cyan. We are very fortunate today to have quite a few of the people who worked on the game here to talk with us. So without further ado, I'm going to have all of our panelists go ahead and introduce yourselves and give us maybe a brief description of what you did on the game.
I guess I can kick off real fast. My name is Michel Kripalani, and I was the executive producer. I was also the CEO of Presto Studios at the time. So I was involved in sort of landing the deal and then encouraging the rest of the amazing Presto Studios employees to knock the game out. It was a great 2 years of my life. And maybe I'll pass to Phil.
I'm Phil Saunders. I was the creative director of Myst III. Also took on some design duties. So I was involved in designing Materia and Tamana, as well as just being involved in story development and gameplay and puzzle development and art directing the team. Jamie?
Oh, sure. I'll take over. Am I live?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, cool. My name is Jamie Scott, and I was the audio director and sound designer. I guess they were kind of the same at the time. But I made most of the sounds for the game. Then I dealt with a lot of the technical implementations of the game and oversaw, the recording sessions, the video sessions, the music sessions, all of the things that an audio director sort of keeps in their wheelhouse. And apparently I made the sounds for the squee because Jack just told me about that. And I didn't remember it, but there it is. So yeah, that was my responsible for the responsibility for the game. It was crazy. I don't know. It was like a year that we did it. And my son was born in that time, so it is a bit of a jumble in my mind, but hopefully I can remember a bunch about it. I'll pass it off to, let's see, Casey.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. So my name is Casey Steffen. I was, I guess, lead modeler on Materia. I started out at Presto as an intern, if people remember that long ago. And my first job as an artist was working at Presto, and this was my second project with them. And I don't know, for me, it was a really important time in my life as a young person, developing professional skills. I was lucky enough to work with people like Phil and Jamie, and thankfully Michel. The standards by which I try to live by, these people set for me back then. So, yeah. Who else we got? Jack?
Jack, yep.
Yeah. So, my name is Jack Wall. I was the composer of Myst III, and it was probably the game that sort of started my career in earnest as an independent composer. It was such a dream come true to work on the game, because the thing that got me into games to begin with was the first Myst game, and then Riven. I was so enthralled by that whole experience. I thought, wow, music and games is pretty cool. I really loved Robin's, take on music for games. It was very immersive, and just really appreciated it. And then just getting the opportunity to audition to become the composer for Myst III was just amazing. And it was like one of the first orchestral sessions in games. It wasn't the first. I think that belongs to Bruce Broughton. Several years before, it was like 93, I think, was that game. But I can't remember what the name of that game was. But yeah, it was really so fun working with Presto, and just having everybody there at the sessions up in Seattle was kind of a really fun memory for me. Yeah, just an amazing time. And Jamie did do the squeeze sound. I think it went something like this. like that. I don't know. But it was really amazing to see that tailing off into, you know, it was in the trailer. I remember tailing off into oblivion kind of thing, sound. Anyway.
Well, we have some.
Phil, I know at the, oh, I was
I'm
gonna
sorry,
say,
go ahead.
do you mind if it's all right? Phil wanted to mention a couple of our designers that we lost. The team that worked on Myst III was over about 24 people. And Phil, would you mind doing that real quick just at the top there?
Sure, just wanted to mention Francis Cyan and Seth Fisher, who designed Voltaic and Jananan and Narayanan, respectively, passed away some years ago. So just wanted to acknowledge them.
Yeah, and James Rochelle passed away.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was the texture artist for Materia, and
that's right.
He was a big inspiration on that project for a lot of people. I remember struggling through, you know, learning 3ds Max, figuring out how to collaborate with other artists, and James was right there in that struggle with me, and you know, I miss that guy a lot.
Yeah,
we all do.
Thank you very much for sharing those memories of those people that we've unfortunately lost.
We'll bring them up again when we start talking about the details.
Absolutely, please do. We have some audience questions already starting to come in, yay.
Wonderful.
So from Jade Gecko, did any of the general ideas, locales, or puzzles for Journeyman 4 or that were cut from other games get incorporated into Myst 3?
To my recollection, they did not. Phil, you can confirm this. We do still have a full design document for Journeyman 4, and I don't believe that there's any overlaps at all. The Journeyman games were really based on real history and going to visit Nikola Tesla and some other cool stuff like that. It was very different than the Myst worlds.
Crystal Jones asks, how did you make the squee?
From a physical standpoint or from a local standpoint?
That's not clarified. I'm assuming from a physical standpoint.
Well, Ron Lehman was the designer of it, was the character designer for that creature.
Yeah, I remember that. From an audio perspective, yeah, I think the trailer was the first time we had an introduction to that creature. And yeah, it was just really just me, you know, making little noises in a microphone and then probably pitch shifting them up, if I remember correctly, because I do that a lot.
Jamie, this was 20 years ago. You probably didn't need to pitch shift at that time.
Oh, I know. It's funny that we were just such little kids back then. We were.
Anyone remember who modeled and textured and animated him? I'm gonna guess that it was probably Mike Brown.
Yeah, I think you'd be right about that.
It was Mike Brown.
Yeah, it totally was.
Yeah, he was the creature guy back then, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And this was the first game as a company that we'd switched over to 3ds Max, and Mike was really the specialist in Max. Right before that, we were always using Electric Image and other tools.
Alias for a very brief period of time.
Yep.
Painful brief period of time.
This next question is from Yali. Yali asks, what happened to all the unreleased concept art seen in the Making of Exile documentary, and would it be possible to see those released online?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I was talking with the crew before this panel started. We actually do have a storage facility sitting in San Diego in an undisclosed location that has all the original sketches and all the original material from the game. So maybe one of these days that would be a very interesting project to go and, you know, just do some photography of that and somehow make it available. It probably would be really cool to see some of the evolution of some of the ages and some of the stuff that didn't make it in.
I assure you that the fans would be delighted by that.
Yeah. It's
going to be an upcoming episode of Storage Wars.
There you go. That would be a very interesting storage container to actually get. There's a Journeyman biosuit in there and a whole bunch of Myst III artwork.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what we didn't use. I know there's probably a lot of development. I remember a lot of Francis's different sketches for Voltaic that we went through.
He had a lot of ideas for that.
Yeah, for the airship and for different puzzles and stuff. Yeah.
I always just thought it was cool seeing the different styles that each of the different designers and illustrators had, and then how that transformed into the worlds. Because, you know, at that time, Phil, how many creative illustrators did we have working on this game? I want to say must have been 5 or 6. It was like at the high end. It's like a quarter of the team.
Would have been Ron, Francis, Seth, Stephen Hogendijk, and myself. Yeah. And then other people, you know, extra artists and modelers contributed as well.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Bastico. Bastico asks, how much guidance did Cyan provide, if any?
Good question.
Pretty little. We were kind of on our own. I mean, we've always been on great terms with Cyan, and, you know, had a lot of conversations with Rand. Primarily at that time, Rand was involved heavily in Cyan. Robin was a little bit more gone during that period. But we were given a lot of direction and instruction by, it was Broderbund at the time that we signed the original deal with. And they wanted us to kind of do the evolution of the game and put our own twist on it. So a lot of research into Myst, a lot of research into Riven, and then really trying to figure out where we thought the story could go from there. But not so much, to answer the question, not so much directly with Cyan.
Yeah, I think, you know, there was a lot of trust there because, you know, we had both sort of developed in the same direction at the same time. I mean, the Journeyman games came out around the same time as Myst, and, you know, had very much the same sort of sensibility and philosophy. And I do remember we did make a trip, myself and Michel and Greg at least did a trip up to Spokane and spent some time sitting down with them and walking them through what we envisioned and stuff. And I think they were, you know, very, very appreciative of the direction that we were taking with it.
Our next question is from Callum Traveler. Callum asks, what age was the most fun to design?
Ooh. Well, I think, you know, we would all have different opinions about that. You know, Amateria for me, obviously. I don't know. I think probably the most intriguing, interesting one for me would have been Amana that Ron Lehman did.
That was crazy.
Or Adana, not Amana, Adana.
Yeah, Adana. Yeah.
But yeah, it was so interesting and bizarre and trying to come up with puzzles that were based on natural phenomenon and things rather than mechanical items. I think that was certainly the most challenging and probably the most rewarding.
I remember the first time he showed up with the clay, and he's like, "I'm going to build this thing out in clay first." And I'm looking at him, going, "You're gonna do what?"
I remember that.
That one pushed me to the edge of what I thought was possible for sure.
Yeah, I don't know whether that ever made it into any making of stuff or videos, but yeah, Ron.
I think it did. Yeah.
Ron did some sketches, and then he decided, you know, this is so complex and convoluted and internal that I'm going to get some armature wire and some clay, and I'm going to sculpt this environment so that I can figure out the relationships between things. And yeah, I was very impressed with that.
I can't remember who was assigned to model it, but that must have been probably one of the hardest tasks we've ever asked anyone to do. Like, take this clay sculpture and make it in 3ds Max without scanning it.
I think that was Steve Kemp, if I'm not mistaken.
Might have been. I can't recall.
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah.
So it would have been Jose, Nate, and yourself, Casey, doing most of the modeling.
Yeah, for the central land. Forget the name of it. That Seth designed.
Jananan.
Jananan, yes.
Yeah.
That turned out so much better than because we started with that, and I was, you know, in a lot of production you end up going back and redoing the first things that you start with, and that turned out so good, I thought, that everybody just marched right on to the age at hand after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was beautiful work. And Seth just poured everything of all of his eclectic personality into that environment. I mean, people who don't know Seth don't realize, he used to show up to work in a Godzilla suit on some random day, and
Just because.
No, not just because. It was Casual Friday, and everyone wore Hawaiian shirts, and so Seth took that as like,
oh no, except Michael Saladino. Michael Saladino would show up in a 3-piece suit for Casual Friday.
Well, you weren't allowed to open up the bar if you weren't in a 3-piece suit, right?
Yeah.
Right next to his desk.
Our next question is from Telrov Chris. They ask, was Amateria built around the roller coaster reward for completing the age, or was that thought of later?
It was absolutely built around the roller coaster. The whole concept of it was that you would have some kind of ride, and I think that was very much inspired by the tube ride in Riven. We wanted to have something like that the reward for completing that age would be this great experience. And so the idea was to come up with some central concept that each of the puzzles would offer an additional piece of the puzzle to solving that central concept. And then the reward for getting all of that would be to unlock the whole path and then get to ride it. And the central puzzle at the middle, like within the main building, like figuring out how to create those rotating tracks and stuff was a Gordian knot of design for sure.
Our next question is for Jack Wall specifically, and this is from Key of W. Key of W asks, what was it like trying to tie your musical language into an established franchise? How much did you try to build off what Robin Miller already did, and how much did you feel free to do your own thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember. No, I'm kidding. I'm looking.
It was all about the Julian pipes.
I'm looking at this soundtrack. Yeah, the Julian pipe. Yeah. No, I did a deep dive into Robin's work in both Myst and Riven, and what I found was there was only 1 or 2 real themes that he had done, because Robin's idea was that, especially back in those early days, early to mid 90s, it was hard to really do interactive music, without, and he wanted to do real music, meaning not MIDI triggered type music like bleeps and bloops era, but he wanted to do like real music. And in order to not be repetitive, he didn't use melody as much. So I was pretty freed up to do whatever we wanted to do, but Atris's Study, which is the 3rd one on the soundtrack, was like a 6-minute homage to.
Oh, sorry, that's my bed.
Like a homage to the Atris theme from Myst, I think. So we did that, and then it was fun because we my whole thought process around the score was, let's use sounds you don't hear very often. So there was like a lot of duduk, which at the time was pretty rare. The only place I'd ever heard that was like Peter Gabriel's soundtrack to that movie about
Passion of the Christ.
Passion of the Christ.
Last Temptation.
Last Temptation.
Last Temptation. That's the
Yes.
one. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
Get your Christ together.
Wrong Christ movie. So yeah, we did that, and people were like, "Wow, what is that?" Now everybody knows what that is. But yeah, that was kind of fun. And we used Eric Rigler from Braveheart, who played Alien Pipes on the. I think I used it somewhere, but that was kind of one of my audition pieces, was just using these crazy sounds that I just enjoyed working with. I remember working with Susan Rawcliffe. She would make her own clay instruments. So they're wind instruments, but they sounded really odd. So I used a lot of stuff with her, and just kind of found sound really, because we wanted to make it sound otherworldly. And my favorite ones to write for this game were like the themes from Medun and Amateria and Voltaic. They were really, really kind of a fun, where we could be really original and just do our own thing.
For our next question, Kalamas points to the fact that the game was essentially made in around a year, and is wondering if you could give us some more insight into the design process and how that all went.
Michel, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. A year is probably a little short. I recall it being about 21 to 24 months. It actually felt a little bit like a lifetime. I mean, we were in the office most of those 21 to 24 months.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there was an early pitch with Broderbund and some early tests that were done. And then once we got the contract, we kind of started from scratch. I don't know. Phil, you want to talk about, I mean, I know that there was we did a lot of like researching to try to figure out what made Myst Myst and what made Riven Riven. And then from there, we kind of started into it, right? And this would have probably been in late 99, early 2000, I guess.
Yeah, I think the first thing was kind of analyzing, the existing games and figuring out, what worked really well and what we felt that we could add something to improve the play experience. And certainly what worked really well compared to the games that we had come from was the lack of interface and just throwing you right in, immersing you directly into the story, immersing you directly into the worlds, not giving you any instructions and just plunking you in and letting people just explore and play, and then organically start to discover the puzzles and that kind of thing. Also the idea that, which is something that was shared with the Journeyman games, the idea that you can sort of go to any environment you want and jump back and forth and, figure out puzzles. If you get stuck in one place, you can go to another place. One of the things we really wanted to improve on was the intuitiveness of the puzzles. We had kind of a philosophy at Presto, was that, as game designers, sure, we want to challenge people, but it's like hosting a great dinner party. You want everybody to have a good time, right? That's the point. So the way that we approached the puzzles was to make sure that in the non-puzzle interactive activities within each age, we would be surreptitiously training you in the skills required to solve the puzzles. So if there was something a puzzle that required balance and levers, for example, we would have something interactive that wasn't a puzzle, just something that you play with, that would teach you the nature of, levers and balance or something like that. So that, without you realizing it necessarily, you're actually being trained in how to solve the puzzle. Because, when you get to the puzzle, we want everyone to be able to solve it, and we want everyone to feel smart, right? So that's the joy of playing a puzzle game. It may be challenging, but to know that everyone who's playing has, by the time they reach that puzzle, been given all the tools that they require to solve it. And so I think that was from a gameplay design standpoint what our philosophy was, and then from an aesthetic standpoint, just trying to create environments that were A, beautiful, and B, surreal. So finding things that relate to things. I mean, we didn't want everything to be completely alien, because I don't think that's what the Myst universe is about. It's about, strange juxtapositions of natural things and things that you may have encountered before. You go back to Myst and there's the ship in the middle of the island, which is just this surreal juxtaposition, and also looking at nature. So in a lot of our environments, we looked at strange natural phenomenon, like in Amateuria. We looked at columnar basalt formations like Devil's Tower or Devil's Postpile or Giant's Causeway, and that formed the basis of the island. And then juxtaposing that with Japanese architecture in an interesting way, and introducing elements like the sulfur pools from Yosemite and things like that. So just really looking at ways to create surreal beauty. Anyone want to add anything else?
I just want to add, I mean, you touched on it a little bit, but I really want to emphasize, we really wanted people to be able to finish the game. Like, there's so much work that goes into these games. We wanted everyone to be able to see every part of it. So we really tried to focus on finishability. I don't know if that's a word, but that's kind of part of the design philosophy I know we went into it with.
For sure. And the reason for that, more than anything else, is that, I mean, this isn't a casual, play a couple of levels, every once in a while kind of game. This is, and Mary would, if she was here, would be able to speak to this a lot more, but just the whole experience is a storytelling experience. And we want everyone to get to the end of the book. And right. We've spent a lot of time trying to create a truly emotionally satisfying story, not just an intellectual experience, but an emotional, a visceral experience. So, and that was the heart of, why we, centered all of this around Saavedra's story. We wanted an antagonist with an extremely sympathetic backstory, who, because that's, I mean, you are you. I mean, the player is the main character, sure, but other than the player, Saavedra is really our window into this world. He's the character that we interact with the most. He's the viewpoint character to the story of these worlds, and we wanted that to be, a really heartfelt experience.
That's actually the perfect segue into our next question, which is from Aiden, and is, what was it like working with Brad Dourif?
That was such an amazing honor and joy. And I think Michel will remember probably the most, the most moving and surprising moment was the night before our first day of shooting. We had a dinner party for cast and crew. And we were sitting with Brad and talking to Brad, and he was telling us how much he loved games, and the reason why, we were shocked that he would take this project on to start with, because I mean, when Exile was being done, I don't think the games industry was quite as prominent as it is now in the entertainment world. So for an Academy Award-winning actor to actually accept, and he was our #1 choice. He was the first person we went after. And he explained to us that, he loved games. He loved adventure games in particular. He was a huge Myst fan. And then he said something that just blew my mind. He was like, there was this one game though that I played that's like one of my favorite games of all time. It's this thing called the Journeyman Project. Have you guys heard of it? And yeah,
he was cool to work with. Total pro, knew his stuff. It's amazing how fast he got what we needed, the performances we needed out of him. It was like, okay, we need you to have this emotion, and you like snapped your fingers and boom, he was in it full blown. Total pro. Great to work with.
Brad was my introduction to dynamic range and recording audio.
Yeah.
I was on the set as the mic. I was the recordist, so I, holding the mic, and he went through such huge range of whispering and being really quiet to like explosive kind of stuff, and I'm like riding the gain on the recorder, just going, oh my god, and I was not a very experienced sound mixer at the time, so I was just like blowing out takes because it was just too hot, and he was blowing out the mic, and I was just like, can I get a redo? And it just started to get cumbersome, but we actually ended up doing quite a bit of ADR for that, because some of the stuff that we record on set was just too loud. And you know, it's like when you turn it up to get the whispered parts, the noise in the room starts to cloud the way that it sounds. And so we fixed a lot of that stuff in ADR, and we came up to LA and recorded, I think it was 2 sessions with him, and then got it to sound good. But that
There was also
I,
the trailer session too.
that's right. Yeah, I didn't go to that one. Yeah, I was busy on something else, or I think Beneath or something. But yeah, that was really interesting, working with that kind of dynamic range, because most of the actors that I had worked with prior to that or had recorded were, you know, one tone kinds of actors, and then Brad just had this entire range of emotionality that I wasn't prepared for.
Next question is from Capella. Capella asks, which age from Myst III would you most want to visit in real life?
I want to ride the roller coaster in Amateria.
It's pretty easy.
Can I ride with you? I'll just ride with you.
Yeah. You can sit in the back.
Yeah.
I still watch that video every once in a while, and there's one mistake. I only see one mistake in that model. That was a you know, just building that was so, it was a labor of just logic and how to, like, just, I'm still amazed there weren't light leaks going through those columns when we put that to render. But yeah, I'd like to go on that roller coaster ride, especially through the tower in the middle.
Yeah.
It would be Adana for me. It's just so beautiful.
I'll go there with you.
I'll go Jananan. I just love the look.
You're going to
of
move
it.
in?
Yep.
Park your camper right on the side.
I will.
You like the basement?
Brian Crick asks, can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for and design of the Squee and Trap puzzle? It's one of my favorite puzzles in the whole series.
Hmm.
The Squee rides again.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what the biggest challenge of that puzzle was. The biggest challenge was designing the ear plant. Seth did a bunch of designs for that were spectacularly beautiful, interesting, intriguing, bizarre, plant designs. But the challenge with them was that they didn't project their purpose, right? And the first thing we needed was for someone to be able to just look at it and realize that it existed to capture sound. So we had to do a number of variations on that, working, should it look like a satellite dish? Should it look like a human ear? Should it look like a stereo speaker? Like, what are we going to use as a visual cue to get people to figure out that, oh, I've got to aim this thing at the Squee and I'll be able to hear that sound. And that's the kind of detail that you have to think about when you're thinking about, okay, well, how do I make this a good experience for the players so they don't have to, solve the puzzle by accident.
Our next question is from Squee Fruit. Squee are really popular with Myst fans. Squee Fruit asks, and I think this is more toward Jack, although anyone is welcome to jump in. How did you come up with the Narayani language for the songs? Is there more to the language that is not revealed in the songs? And is there a translation or transcription of the words in the songs other than the main theme, like The Dilemma or All Is Well, My Friend?
Oh, God. There, somewhere in my shed in the back is a box with all of the lyric translations and all of it. And I promised at last year's Mysterium I would release those, but I haven't found them yet. It's been a busy year. Yeah, Narani was just me making up a language because it hadn't been made up yet. And I probably worked with you guys on that a little bit, I think.
I'm sure Mary had some input into that.
Yes, yes, Mary, yeah. I'm sure it was with Mary directly. We, you know, I would just come up with sort of, you know, syllables that sort of sounded like what they were, and then would branch off from there. So, you know, you know, it's, for example, like we started out with the Myst III main theme. It was like a list of all the ages, right? So I would just, you know, list out all the ages with the choir, and then we, you know, just took those types of sounds that were in those titles of those ages, and, you know, extrapolate into other words for other things. So that's how I did it.
I just to not take over here. I just ran. Can you see it? Sorry, my background's clipping it. There we go.
Amazing.
That's the original concept art for the squee. And I remember that day that Ron brought that in. Everybody was just like, "This is going to be so cool." And then it's like, how are we going to animate that? And nobody had a clue. But then Mike would just like go crazy at night, and everybody would come back the next day. We'd crowd around his desk. We saw those ears animate. It was just like, oh, this is going to be cool. I remember that. It was like moments like that where other people's creativity showed how talented the group of people were that we were working with, where one person could do something that was amazing, and then another person would just pick that up and run with it and do something that blew everybody away. You're just like, wow, I'm working with some talented people right now. And yeah, it's nice that talent and like that quality of work lives on in somebody's screen name now. That's hysterical to me.
Palamas asks about the process of pitching to Cyan to let you make Myst III, and wondering a little bit more about the specifics of how that went, if you're able to say.
Yeah, the opportunity actually came through Broderbund. And, you know, I'm sure that Rand and Robin could probably shed more light on this, but the way that I understand it was that after Riven, there just wasn't a large appetite to do a third Myst game anytime soon. And I think that the idea was floated at Broderbund that, you know, possibly a different studio could do the third game. And I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I guess there was a conversation of what studios might be able to do it. And as I understand it, Presto was on that list, or the short list, or was the list, because I got a phone call from Broderbund. Basically, someone at Broderbund called me up and said, you know, would you be open to the idea of doing the third Myst game? And that's really what opened up the door. We were asked to do a prototype, and some of you on the call might remember that, you know, we did a full working prototype. The pitch was actually in the shape of a Myst book. We had a custom printed, I'm sure that's in storage as well. And it was a full pitch of exactly what we would do. And we were not alone. There were other studios that were pitching against us, and there was some other, you know, business stories that go related to that. It took a little while, but we were pretty stoked. We were pretty excited when we finally had pen on paper and were given the green light to go do it.
Yeah, just to clarify that a little bit, you know, Cyan was busy working on trying to create a real-time live action, or, you know, massively multiplayer Myst world, which is why they didn't want to tackle another boxed product at the time. So I think there was, you know, some demand to do something interim, because that was a very long-term project. Yeah. And they wanted to have something out before that Myst universe came out.
Yeah, and this is a time period where the world seemed to be transitioning away from, you know, adventure games to real-time 3D, you know, Xbox or controller-based games. And so Myst seemed like something that was, you know, an opportunity, but maybe not for too much longer in some people's minds. And I always disagreed with that. I love these games, so you know.
It was also one of the last big pre-rendered games, right? I mean, this is the time of the 3D video cards, and people were trying to do stuff with real-time 3D graphics. You couldn't quite get to Myst level graphics in those days. And I remember, I mean, the render farm we had to put together for this game alone, I want to say was between 22 and 26 dedicated machines, maxed out on RAM, running solid. I mean, it was hundreds and hundreds of thousands of frames that were rendered for this game, where, now you'd never even consider that, right? You just throw it all at the horsepower on the machine, render it live.
And then it was all crushed down to Cinepack compression.
Yeah, well.
But I remember, like, seeing the full res images coming off the screen, and it was just like, oh man, this looks so beautiful. And then, it'd come down to sound, and they would be these crushed little 240 by 360 movies, Cinepack compressed to like 24 kilobits per second. And it was just like, I don't remember it looking like that.
Well, and the other thing about it was that, as a node-based game, right, rather than full range of motion, right, we had been working on our own real-time, render on the fly engine at the time. And, that's right, and we took a very simple component of that and used that, which, we hadn't had on even Journeyman 3, of rendering everything inside a real-time cube. So you had the full 360 range of motion within each of these, rather than using, what was it? QuickTime VR was what we had been using in the past. And this, this allowed for a lot more detail, a lot more speed, a lot more freedom.
Well, and it allowed us to put video into it too, right? I mean, we had a whole set of custom tech where we were basically blitting up to those
really
inside of the cube faces. That, and then don't forget the work that Max was doing to get the water and everything, right? The water ripple and all that stuff was all a post effect that was added. A lot of that stuff was not rendered; it was all done real time. So it was a blend of real time 3D, but I think most people didn't even realize it was real time 3D because it just looked pre-rendered and felt pre-rendered, and there was all the video in it.
Some of the behind the scenes stuff is so impressive even to this day, to think about like what you guys were putting together and making it look so, the video stuff showed so well, even to this day when you look at it, it looks great.
Like lightning in the background in Materia, and just like interesting little bits that just made everything more real. So I think it was a good transitional technology before computers got to the level of power where you could get that level of detail in a, render on the fly engine.
Right.
Yeah.
Pharaoh Guy asks, what was the thought process for the basic design of each age? They're all so different, but still for a cohesive whole.
Well, I think we spent a lot of time trying to make them as different as possible. I mean, down to, time of day, color palette, what kind of materials we would be using, just trying to get as much contrast as possible. And then for Narayan, we're just trying to do something as really bizarre and different as possible. Trying to think of, you guys remember any ages? I mean, because we had a whole bunch of different ideas and we narrowed it down to the ones that we put in.
One had so many great sketches that were just like original concepts art. But I mean, I think the core concept for Materia was, the matter age. We had code words for, all the worlds. And
that's right, yeah.
And so we were, for Amateria, it was kind of like, I think the core concept for the basalt columns was that the material of the island was creating structure and identity and locations. And, that was kind of what I remember working from in a lot of these scenarios. It was, okay, how can I be imaginative about how to organize a basalt column, this, 6-sided column that I know you and I, Phil, both hated at the end of that project. I gotta tell you, man, you and me, we're going to Giants Causeway someday, buddy.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it. Yeah, I'm only within a 2-hour drive of Devil's Tower right now. So
Are you really? Oh
yeah.
man, why don't I just come see you then?
Yeah, come on by. Actually, wait until Sturgis Bike Rally is gone, because
There you
that's
go.
just crazy.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, just the basic idea between the three primary ages, materia is matter, voltaic is energy, and Idana was life. So
That's right.
And how Seth's Tufts combined everything together, I'm still not entirely certain, but that idea that tusks were growing out of an island, that there's an animal that somehow was, behind some prehistoric animal. Like, I think that was one of the ideas that he was playing with, and we're just like, yeah, we can do something with that. We can do something with that. And
yeah, you didn't have to push Seth very far to get into bizarre and surreal. Honestly, you had to rein him in a little bit.
All you had to say was good morning.
he was such a delight. He was just such the nicest, funnest person.
Yeah.
These classic edition sets were so great. I don't even know if I hooked him.
Yeah, I'm actually right next door to his childhood home right now.
No way.
Yeah. He was my wife's oldest childhood friend, and he introduced me to my wife. So yeah, he will be missed.
Yep.
Does anybody remember how we came up with the name for Narayan?
I think Mary was researching like Indian philosophy and stuff.
Wasn't it? We had an intern named Narayan or something.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh wait, no. Okay, so I'm not going to do this. This is. Do you guys remember the original metal? Squeeze?
Yeah.
Wow.
In the original packaging, mind you.
Nice.
Yeah. The collector's edition box,
squeeze,
the jumbo edition.
Yeah, the jumbo edition. I actually have. There
Got
you
mine
go.
right here. There you go.
Nice.
Am I the only one that doesn't have a little squee thing?
Apparently, Michelle's got all of them.
I'm sure I have. Yeah, there's a storage unit full of them. That and TSA buttons.
Yeah, right.
So Nictomorphia asks, Exile was the first game in the Myst series to use the idea of rewarding the player with a cinematic for completing each age. How did that come up? Was it a deliberate decision or a natural outgrowth of the design process?
I mean, Phil, I'm sure you can touch on this. We touched on it a little bit, but it was definitely deliberate. We wanted it to be that you finish an age and you get your reward. You get your ice cream sundae or whatever it happens to be. And we kind of worked the design backwards.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't say, maybe the first to do that for every age, but I think the roller coaster ride in Riven was definitely some of that as well. So
I think it's just that was one of our favorite parts of Riven. So we wanted to take that and replicate that out more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a conscious choice that we all had, and and knowing that's what we were planning for at the conclusion of what we were building. So I think it was just, there was the reward. What kind of rewards can we give people? We can give the people, a joyride.
Yeah.
Hollister has a question for Jack. In the Myst III soundtrack, there are a lot of very unique synth sounds. What hardware and software was used to create those?
God, okay. I don't know.
Wait a second. 19 years ago, you don't remember, Jack?
Yeah, I think it was probably Omnisphere was a big thing, and then I mixed with lots of different musicians. I don't remember, honestly. And it's weird too, because like the orchestral stuff, like for me, when I listen to the soundtrack, I think, oh, it's this weird thing where there's all this really cool synthy and soloist kind of, pieces. And then suddenly there's an orchestral piece. It was like, I didn't feel like it was my first orchestral score. So I was just kind of like, winging it really. But, we didn't have good samples back then either. Like all the orchestral samples sounded like crap. So I remember I got to tell this really funny story. The first piece of music I wrote for Exile was for the trailer. And I remember Jamie sending me the trailer saying, hey, I'm really sorry about this, but Crimson Tide is the temp music. Which
like every movie trailer at the time.
Movie trailer at the time. Every single one was Crimson Tide. And I remember Greg, who's so unfair because he's not here, but Greg just wanted me to get closer and closer to this thing. And I literally did 7 versions of that track for E3. It was for E3. It was the first thing I was writing. I won the audition and got in the game, and it's great. And then I went into this Crimson Tide hell of trying to, like, the first thing I did was not anything like Crimson Tide. Second version was like a beefed up version of the first version that I did. And then something like 5 or 6 versions later, I was really like going to get sued by Hans Zimmer for and everybody was like, oh, whatever, just go back to the second one. And I was like, okay, I'll blow up the production on that. So I brought in like all these players and I did it. And they're at E3 assembling the, everything. And I sent them the mix and they called me. Greg called me. I think probably Phil was on the call too, and Michel. And everyone was like, this sounds so cool. So I was like, well, okay, we'll leave you alone now. So it was like really, really like, that was a really funny story for me because I don't think I've ever had to do 7 versions of anything since then.
Wow.
But yeah, it was a fun beginning.
We humbly apologize.
I was going to say, I feel like I owe an apology.
No, I'm really okay with all of that. It was a learning experience for me as well. Just like, I'm getting too close to something and had to back off of that. But I'm sorry, I can't really remember all the synth stuff I used. There's probably lots of Omnisphere because that was kind of new at the time, I think, probably, and that was probably a lot of it.
Go back to your storage unit. You probably have all your rack mount modules.
Yeah, probably. I probably have a few of those somewhere.
Atticus asks a question about the fact that there is a linking book back to Jananin near the start of each age. Wondering if that is to make the world feel more open, that you have the option to go back if you want to.
Well, yeah, I had touched on that a little earlier. I mean, again, one of the things that we brought in from the Journeyman games was just open world freedom to, if you get stuck on something in one world, you just go back and you can try a different world and, just not feeling like you're on rails. So yeah, it was super, super important for us to have that linking book back to Jananin.
Flying Unhindered asks, where did the idea for the Electra Ray in Adana come from? If you remember.
That's a Ron question.
I don't remember that one.
It is a Ron question.
Yeah, Ron would know.
Sorry.
Okay.
I'll have to go back and play it if I have a machine that I can play it on.
If you were going to remake the game with today's technology, what would you do differently?
Oh, that's a good question.
Wow.
I mean, so much time has passed, right? I mean, just the switch from pre-rendered and the limitation of node-based, it would be really interesting to see what it could be all real time. You'd still have to do Rails or something. I don't know. I guess total freeform, maybe.
VR.
Maybe.
VR makes sense. I think it'd be a great VR experience.
It'd be great.
Absolutely.
It'd be great to bring into VR.
It's a node-based system. That sounds like the natural fit to me.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's funny, like doing this thing, getting my head back into the Myst world made me think of, the journey from there to here now. And, I think about where I was creatively as an artist, as a sound person back then, and what I am now. And I think of like all of the possibilities. I mean, now I think I could come up with some really amazing, great stuff that would have never occurred to me back then. I think it would be wild, and the technology for game audio has just completely blown up. I mean, it's been a full-blown revolution between then and now.
Are you lobbying for the opportunity to redo the squeeze sound, Jamie?
Let's just say I wouldn't turn it down.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the things that I think would be a future technology to pursue would be, some degree of AI-driven character interaction.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
More squeak, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes, more squeak.
More squeak.
More squeak.
Well, we're getting toward the end of our time here, so if I can just ask you one last question to wrap up, which is, what is one thing that you're very proud of about the game?
I guess I can go first. I am just so proud of what the team was able to do. It really was a massive mountain that we were asked to climb in terms of doing this project in the time period that we did it in. A lot less money than Riven and a lot shorter time than Riven, and with a fresh team when considering this universe. So I'm just so proud of what the team at Presto was able to pull together, and Jack and everyone that was affiliated as well. It's definitely one of the projects that I remember as a huge highlight as part of my career.
Well, I'm proud of the fact that here we are 19 years later at a conference where people actually care enough to hear from us about making this game. I mean, that's the fact that it had that kind of an impact, the fact that we're not the forgotten stepchild of the Cyan games.
We were in Parks and Rec, man.
I remember that. Yeah. The little box sitting on the desk.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Just, I feel honored that we were able to produce something that that lived up to Cyan standards.
Yeah, I'm thankful they gave us the opportunity. We're very grateful.
Yeah, Jamie, I don't want to cut you off. Go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say that just pulling it off was a big deal. I always felt like I was sort of out of my league at the time. When we were putting the whole game together, I was always sort of just hanging on. Every task was like, God, can I do this? Am I good enough? I mean, particularly some of the cinematics. I had never done it before, and I was just diving in, sort of flying by the seat of my pants. I mean, I had done the Journeyman Project stuff, obviously, but doing stuff on that scale, it was always very intimidating, and I was stressed out a lot about it. So actually completing it and feeling like I did an adequate job was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I felt a lot like that too. I started out as an intern, so I didn't have a lot of confidence in my skill sets, and it was a lot of learning on the job. And I was a fan, of Myst. That the reason why I wanted to get into video games was because playing Myst on a Risk Mac PC back in the day, and just being like, this is a new form of art, and I want to be a part of this. And I was lucky and blessed to be in the same city as Presto, and I got an internship that ended up being eventually Myst III. The reason why I started the whole career path in the first place, I got the chance to be a part of that legacy. And like the proudest thing for me, I don't know if it's pride or just I'm so grateful that I got the chance to work with people like Jamie. And it's shocking to me to hear him say things like that, because I had such admiration for him and never saw any of that. And Phil, to see the things that he's gone on to do is just, I think, it's just an indication of the other people and the quality of other people that were there, that people like this are here talking right now. So I just feel so lucky to be friends with you guys right now.
We're
lucky to be
have
friends with you
man.
too.
Nice. Yeah, I think for me, it's interesting because like Jamie, like hearing Jamie say I was not confident or whatever. Like I remember just thinking every sound Jamie made was like world class. You know, I just loved his sound design and really paid attention to it. But you know, back 19 years ago, we're talking about like we were kind of all involved in a project that was kind of new and very inventive. I mean, everything we were doing was taking advantage of the latest technology that no one had done before. And so I would see these beautiful renderings and just be so inspired to write music. And you know, back then it was like, here's a screenshot, write a piece of music for the screenshot. It wasn't like I could see really what the game was. And I just looked up Omnisphere. That didn't come out to 2008, so God knows what I was using. So, yeah, but I mean, I'm just like you guys. I'm so proud to be a part of something that really was groundbreaking in its time. It really changed a lot about gaming when it came out, as did the original Myst. I mean, but I thought it took it to a new level, and I'm so proud to be associated with something that was. I'm just so more proud of that game probably than almost anything I've done. And I've done a lot of stuff at this point, but this is the one that I think my heart is most attached to, I have to say.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to add that for me, like one of the greatest things is that pretty much everyone that we worked together with on that project, I mean, we're all still friends. We're all still like, you know, we see each other pretty regularly. And that's, you know, one of the greatest blessings that I think I have out of this is, you know, just this lifelong relationships of being, you know, that have come from that scenario. I mean, I pretty much am in contact with everybody. They're like my primary friend group still 20 years later.
That's great. Yeah, I love coming out to see you guys. I don't get to do it too often.
Yeah. Gotta
Thank
come
you all.
out soon.
Oh,
Thank
man.
you all very much. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate having you all here. Unfortunately, we got to cut it off. We're out of time, but wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Awesome.
Good to
Thank you
see
for
you
giving us
all.
a reason
having
to
us.
get back together.
Bye, guys.
Bye.